I built her a dream house. $400,000. Every beam, every tile, every window. I paid for it. I thought we were building our future together. But when the deed came back, only her name was on it. Not mine, just hers. And when I asked her why, she smiled like I was supposed to understand. I met Zyrene on a Tuesday afternoon at a beachside cafe in Cebu. The sun was setting, painting everything orange and gold, and I was sitting alone with my coffee, watching the waves crash against the shore. I'd been in the Philippines for 3 months by then, trying to figure out what retirement was supposed to feel like. Hawaii had become too expensive, too lonely after my wife died. The house where Margaret and I spent 43 years together felt like a museum of memories I couldn't escape. My daughter Karen was busy with her own life in California, her own career, her own problems. Every time I called her, I could hear the strain in her voice, the obligation. She loved me, but she had her own world. I needed something different, something cheaper, maybe something peaceful. That's what I told myself anyway. But the truth was simpler and more desperate than that. I was 72 years old and I was running from the silence that followed me everywhere. She walked over to my table with a pot of coffee and that smile. God, that smile. She couldn't have been more than 30, with dark eyes that caught the sunset light and long black hair pulled into a ponytail that swayed when she moved. She wore the cafe uniform, a simple white shirt and black pants, but she moved with this easy confidence that made me look twice. There was something about her energy, something warm and genuine that I hadn't felt in years. "More coffee, sir?" she asked. Her English was good, just a slight accent that made every word sound softer, more careful. I nodded and tried to smile. "Please, and call me Porter. Sir makes me feel older than I already am." She laughed at that, a real laugh, and poured the coffee slow and careful, not spilling a drop. Then she looked at me with what seemed like genuine curiosity. "Porter, that's a nice name. Strong? You're American?" "From Hawaii, originally," I said. "Retired postal worker. Came here to stretch my pension a bit further. Everything costs too much back home." She set the pot down and tilted her head, studying me. "Hawaii. I always wanted to go there. Is it beautiful, like the pictures?" "Very," I said. "White beaches, green mountains, blue water everywhere, but expensive and lonely." I don't know why I added that last part. Maybe because she seemed interested. Maybe because I hadn't had a real conversation with anyone in days. Maybe because those dark eyes made me feel like I could be honest. She didn't leave like I expected. Instead, she glanced around the empty cafe, then pulled out the chair across from me and sat down. "Why lonely? Hawaii sounds like paradise." I hesitated, my fingers wrapped around the warm coffee cup, but something about her made me want to talk. "My wife passed 2 years ago. Cancer. We were together 43 years. After she died, everything felt wrong. The house felt too big. The routine felt pointless. My daughter suggested I travel, try something new, get out of my own head. So here I am, Cebu, as far from Hawaii as I could get without leaving the planet." Zyrene's expression shifted, softened in a way that felt genuine. She reached across the table and touched my hand, just for a moment, her fingers warm against my skin. "I'm sorry. That's so sad. 43 years is a long time. You must have really loved her." "I did," I said quietly. "Still do, in a way. You don't just stop." "No," she said. "You don't. But you're here now. Maybe that's good. Maybe you can be happy again. Life doesn't end just because love does." Those words hit me harder than they should have. You deserve to be happy again. When was the last time someone said something like that to me? When was the last time anyone cared enough to say it and mean it? We talked for 2 hours. The cafe closed around us. Other customers left. The sun disappeared completely, but she stayed. She told me about her life, and I listened to every word like it was the most important story I'd ever heard. Single mother, raising a 6-year-old daughter named Sofia on her own. The father left before Sofia was born, just disappeared one day and never came back. She worked at the cafe 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, barely making enough to cover rent and food. Her mother Lida helped when she could, but money was always tight, always a struggle, always this weight pressing down. She talked about her dreams, small things that seemed huge to her. A better school for Sofia, a house of their own someday where they wouldn't have to worry about the landlord raising rent or kicking them out. A life where Sofia could be a kid without worrying about whether there'd be food tomorrow. I listened to every word, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Needed, useful, alive. When I finally stood up to leave, she walked me to the door. The street outside was dark and quiet, just a few streetlights flickering. "Come back tomorrow," she said, looking up at me. "I work every day except Sunday. I'd like to talk more, if you want." I smiled, really smiled, for the first time in months. "I will. I'd like that." And I did. The next day and the day after that. Within a week, I was spending every afternoon at that cafe, sitting at the same corner table, ordering coffee I didn't really want, waiting for Zyrene's breaks so we could talk. She asked about my life, my career, my wife, what it was like delivering mail for 35 years, what Hawaii looked like in winter, what Margaret's favorite food was. I told her everything, and she listened like every word mattered, like I mattered. She never asked for anything, never hinted that she needed help, but I could see the struggle in her eyes, the exhaustion in the way her shoulders sagged at the end of her shift. I could see the weight she carried, and I wanted to help. I wanted to do something that mattered. One evening, after the cafe closed, I offered to walk her home. She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay. But it's not fancy." "I don't care about fancy," I said. She lived in a small apartment building about 15 minutes away, 2 rooms for her, Sofia, and her mother Lida. The building was old, with paint peeling off the walls and narrow hallways that smelled like mildew and cooking oil. When we reached her door on the 3rd floor, she turned to me and smiled. "Thank you, Porter, for everything, for talking to me, for listening, for making me feel like someone cares." I touched her cheek without thinking. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the way she looked at me. Maybe it was the loneliness. Maybe it was just desperation dressed up as affection. "I do care, Zyrene, more than I probably should." She leaned into my hand and closed her eyes. "I care about you too, Porter. You're different. You're kind." That was the beginning. That moment right there. That touch. That lie. I told myself that this was real. 2 weeks later, Zyrene invited me to meet Sofia. I bought a little toy dolphin from a shop near my apartment, something a kid might like, and took a jeepney to their place. When I knocked on the door, I heard small footsteps running and then Zyrene's voice saying something in Cebuano. The door opened and Sofia stood there, barely reaching my waist, with her mother's dark eyes and a pink dress that was too big for her. She stared up at me, then hid behind Zyrene's leg. "Sofia, this is Uncle Porter," Zyrene said gently, crouching down. "He's my friend. Can you say hello?" Sofia peeked out from behind her mother but didn't say anything. I knelt down, my knees creaking, and held out the dolphin. "I brought you something from Hawaii. Do you like dolphins?" She looked at the toy, then at me, then back at the toy. Slowly, she reached out and grabbed it, holding it against her chest. "Thank you, Uncle Porter," she whispered. Uncle Porter. Hearing that made my chest tighten in a way I didn't expect. I'd never had grandchildren. My daughter Karen had decided not to have kids, said the world was too complicated, too expensive, too uncertain, and here was this little girl, looking at me like maybe I mattered, like maybe I could be someone important in her life. "You're welcome, sweetheart," I managed to say. Sofia smiled then, a real smile, and ran back into the apartment clutching the dolphin. Zyrene touched my shoulder. "She likes you already. Come in, meet my mother." Lida was different. She was in her 50s, with gray streaks in her black hair and sharp eyes that watched everything. She was standing at the stove stirring something that smelled like garlic and vinegar, and she didn't turn around when we walked in. Zyrene spoke to her in rapid Cebuano, and Lida finally turned, looked me up and down, and nodded once. "So you're the American," she said in Tagalog, her voice flat, skeptical. Zyrene jumped in quickly. "My mother says welcome, Porter. She's happy to meet you. But I knew that wasn't what she'd said. I'd heard enough Tagalog and Cebuano by then to catch the tone, the skepticism, the judgment. Still, I smiled and offered my hand. Thank you for having me, Lita. Your daughter has told me wonderful things about you. Lita looked at my hand for a long moment, then shook it briefly, her grip firm but not warm. Then she turned back to the stove without another word, dismissing me. Over the next few months, Zyrene and I became inseparable. We went to the beach on her days off, explored hidden waterfalls outside the city, ate at small local restaurants where she taught me Cebuano phrases I could never pronounce correctly. She laughed at my terrible accent, corrected me patiently, held my hand across the table. I felt young again, not physically, but emotionally, like I had something to look forward to, like my life had meaning beyond just existing. I started giving her money, not because she asked. She never asked directly. But I could see the stress in her face when she talked about Sofia's school fees coming due. I could see her counting pesos at the market, choosing the cheaper vegetables, putting things back that she wanted but couldn't afford. One day, we were at the market together and she was looking at new shoes for Sofia. The old ones had holes in the soles. She picked up a pair, checked the price tag, and put them back. Too expensive, she said quietly. I picked them up. How much? Porter, no. It's okay. We can wait. How much, Zyrene? 1,500 pesos. It's too much. I can find cheaper ones. I handed the shoes to the vendor and pulled out my wallet. We'll take them. Porter, let me do this, I said. Please. It makes me happy to help. Her eyes filled with tears right there in the market. She hugged me tight, not caring who saw. You're so good to us. So good. After that, I paid for everything. Sofia's school fees, groceries, new clothes when theirs wore out, a new motorbike so Zyrene didn't have to take the crowded jeepney to work anymore, sweating in the heat, breathing exhaust fumes, utilities when Lita's electricity got cut off, a new phone for Zyrene when hers broke, medicine when Sofia got sick. Every time I gave her money, Zyrene cried and thanked me and held me like I was saving her life. And maybe I was. Or maybe I was just buying something that looked like love, something that felt like purpose. One night, we were lying together in my small rental apartment, the ceiling fan spinning slowly overhead, barely pushing the humid air around. Zyrene was quiet, her head on my chest, her finger tracing slow circles on my skin. I could feel her thinking, working up to something. Porter, she said softly. Yeah? Can I ask you something? Something big? My heart skipped. Anything. What is it? She lifted her head and looked at me, her eyes serious in the dim light. What if we built a house together? I turned my head to look at her. A house? A real home, she said, sitting up now, excited, for all of us. Me, Sofia, you, even my mother if she wants, somewhere safe, somewhere beautiful, somewhere we don't have to worry about rent or landlords or being kicked out. Our own place, our forever place. My heart started pounding. A home, with her, with Sofia, a family again, the thing I'd lost when Margaret died, the thing I thought I'd never have again, the thing I'd been searching for without even knowing it. Where would we build it? I asked, my voice shaking slightly. Outside the city, she said, her words coming faster now, somewhere quiet but not too far, maybe 30 minutes, with a yard for Sofia to play, trees, space, fresh air. I know someone who can help. My Uncle Rodrigo knows a good builder, someone honest who won't overcharge us or cut corners. How much would something like that cost? She bit her lip, hesitant. Maybe $50,000 for the land, good land, not too far from town, with clean title, and then maybe more for the house itself. We can build it slowly, though. Together, take our time, make it exactly how we want, nothing fancy, just comfortable, just ours. I didn't even think. I should have. I should have asked more questions, should have talked to a lawyer, should have done research, should have been careful. But I didn't, because I wanted this. I needed this. I needed to believe that my life wasn't over, that I could still build something that mattered, that I could still be important to someone. Let's do it, I said. She stared at me, eyes wide. Really? You mean it? You're not just saying that? Really, I said, smiling, feeling more sure than I had about anything in years. Let's build our future, Zyrene. Let's make a home. For all of us. She kissed me then, hard and desperate, her hands in my hair, her body pressed against mine. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet with tears. I love you, Porter. I love you so much. You don't know what this means to me. To Sofia. To my whole family. You're giving us a life. A real life. Not just surviving anymore, but actually living. I believed that too. God help me, I believed every single word. We found the land a week later. It was beautiful in a way that took my breath away. Half an acre in a quiet area about 30 minutes outside Cebu, surrounded by palm trees and banana plants, with a view of the mountains in the distance. The air smelled clean there, like rain and earth, not exhaust and garbage. Zyrene's uncle Rodrigo met us at the property, a short man in his 50s with weathered hands and a constant smile. He spoke rapid Cebuano with Zyrene, gesturing at different corners of the property, pointing to where utilities would run, where the road access was, where the boundaries were marked. I stood there feeling useless, unable to understand anything they were saying. But Zyrene kept smiling at me, touching my arm, including me even though I couldn't follow the conversation. Finally, she turned to me. He says this is a very good price, $50,000. The land is clean, no problems with the title, close to the road, but we have to move fast. Someone else is interested. A businessman from Manila. If we wait too long, we'll lose it. $50,000. That was a significant chunk of my savings. Not everything, but close to half of what I had left after Margaret's medical bills and funeral. But I looked at Zyrene's excited face, at Sofia running through the grass, chasing butterflies, at the mountains in the distance, and I couldn't say no. I couldn't let them down. Let's do it, I said. I'll wire the money tomorrow. Zyrene threw her arms around me, nearly knocking me over. Thank you, baby. Thank you so much. This is the beginning of everything. Our future starts right here. The next day, I went to the bank and wired $50,000 to an account Zyrene provided. Her uncle Rodrigo's account, she explained, because the seller wanted payment in pesos and it was easier to do the currency exchange through a local account. The bank officer raised an eyebrow but processed the transfer. I signed the forms, watched my account balance drop by $50,000, and tried to ignore the small voice in my head asking if this was smart, if I should slow down, if I should get something in writing. But I didn't listen to that voice. I pushed it down, because Zyrene was waiting outside the bank with excited eyes, and I didn't want to ruin her happiness with my paranoia. Construction began within a week. Rodrigo hired a builder he'd worked with before, a man named Ernesto, who brought in a crew of 8 workers. They started clearing the land, cutting back the overgrown brush, leveling the ground, marking out the foundation. I visited the site every single day, sometimes twice. I drove my rented motorbike out there in the morning heat, stood there sweating through my shirt, watching the foundation get dug, the rebar laid, the concrete poured. I imagined the life we'd have. Waking up with Zyrene beside me, making breakfast together, watching Sofia play in the yard, maybe getting a dog someday, having Lita over for Sunday dinners, growing old in a place that was ours, really ours, not rented, not temporary, permanent. Zyrene came with me most days. She brought me lunch in Tupperware containers, fried rice and pork adobo that she'd made that morning, mango slices for dessert. She kissed my cheek, called me her king, held my hand as we walked around the property planning where everything would go. This will be the kitchen, she said one afternoon, standing in what was still just dirt and wooden markers. Big windows so I can see the yard while I cook. And here, right here, the living room, with a TV and a nice couch where Sofia can do her homework. And back there, that corner, that's our bedroom. With a view of the mountains? I asked. Exactly, she said, squeezing my hand. So we can wake up to that view every single morning for the rest of our lives. I pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. This is really happening. We're actually doing this. Building a home. We are, she whispered against my chest. Our home, our future. The builder worked fast. Within 2 months, the frame was up, walls were rising from concrete blocks, the shape of the house becoming real and solid. But construction costs kept climbing higher than anyone had estimated. Materials were more expensive than Rodrigo had quoted. Labor took longer than expected. Permits required additional fees at the municipal office. The electrical inspection needed a bribe. The plumbing materials had to be upgraded to meet code. Every week, Zyrene came to me with another request, another need, another expense. Baby, Ernesto says we need another $20,000 for the roof materials. Tin is more expensive now because of typhoon season. Okay, I'll transfer it. And the electrical wiring, they need $15,000 more. The inspector says we need thicker wire for safety. Okay, whatever it takes. And the windows, the good ones with proper seals. They're $30,000 more than we thought. I'll send it tomorrow. I kept saying yes. I couldn't stop now. We were too far in. The house was half built. If I stopped sending money, it would sit there unfinished, a monument to my failure. So I sent more and more and more. Another $100,000 for materials. Then $50,000 for labor. Then another $50,000 for finishing work. Tile for the floors. Paint for the walls. Fixtures for the bathrooms. Cabinets for the kitchen. Appliances. A water tank. A septic system. Every time Zyrene asked, I sent it. I wanted the house to be perfect. I wanted her to be happy. I wanted to prove I could give her the life she deserved, the life she'd never had. My savings account drained. $70,000 left, then $40,000, then $20,000. I started pulling from my retirement fund, taking early withdrawals, paying the penalties, not caring. The house mattered more. Our future mattered more. One afternoon, about 4 months into construction, I was standing in what would be our living room. The walls were freshly painted cream and white, sunlight streaming through the new windows, tile floors gleaming. It looked like something out of a magazine. It looked expensive. It looked beautiful. Zyrene walked up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. What are you thinking about? She asked. Our life, I said, my voice thick. How good it's going to be. Waking up here every morning, making breakfast together, watching Sofia grow up, growing old together, never being alone again. She rested her head against my back. I can't wait, Porter. I can't wait to wake up here every day with you, to start our real life. Not just dating, but really living together, as a family. I turned around and held her face in my hands, looking into her eyes. Have you gotten the property deed yet? I'd like to see it, just to make sure everything's in order. Make sure both our names are on it like we planned. She stiffened, just for a second, barely noticeable, but I felt it, a tiny freeze, a hesitation. Then she smiled and the moment passed. It's still being processed, baby. The government here is so slow. Mountains of paperwork, bureaucracy. You know how it is. But don't worry, everything is in both our names. I made sure of that, I promise. I nodded slowly. Okay. I just want to make sure we're protected, both of us, legally. Of course, she said. I want that too. We're building this together. It's our house, for both of us. I'd never do anything to hurt you, Porter. You know that, right? I know, I said, and I did believe her. Or I wanted to believe her so badly that I convinced myself I did. Even when the house was nearly finished and I asked again and she gave me the same answer. Even when $400,000 had left my accounts and I still hadn't seen a single piece of official paper with my name on it. I trusted her, because I was in love, because I didn't want to believe anything else, because questioning her meant questioning everything, and I couldn't do that. Not yet. Not when we were so close to having everything I dreamed of. The house was finally finished. 6 months of construction, $412,000 from my accounts, and it was done. The walls were painted, the floors were tiled, the kitchen had new cabinets and appliances, the bathrooms had clean white fixtures, The yard was landscaped with tropical flowers and a mango tree. It looked perfect, like something from a dream. Zyrene and I stood in the driveway, looking up at it. She was crying, happy tears streaming down her face. "It's so beautiful," she whispered. "I can't believe it's real. I can't believe we did it." "We did," I said, my arm around her shoulders. "Our home, finally." But we still hadn't moved in. Zyrene kept saying soon, just a few more things to finish, just a few more details. I suggested we have a small housewarming, invite some friends, celebrate. She said, "Not yet. Let's wait until everything is perfect." One afternoon, I was at my rental apartment when she showed up at the door. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her purse strap. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Nothing's wrong," she said, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. The property deed finally came through, from the municipal office. "I thought you'd want to see it." My heart leapt. Finally. Proof. Documentation. Our names together on paper. She handed me a folder, and I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was the title to the property, official stamps and signatures from the local government. I scanned the document, looking for my name, looking for Porter, looking for anything that proved I owned half of what I'd paid for entirely. But it wasn't there. The property was listed under one name only, Zyrene de la Cruz. Not Zyrene and Porter, not joint ownership, not co-ownership, not my name anywhere. Just hers, only hers. I stared at the paper, reading it again and again, hoping I'd missed something. But I hadn't. "Zyrene," I said slowly, my voice barely working. "Why isn't my name on this?" She didn't look surprised. She didn't look guilty. She looked prepared, like she'd been expecting this question and had her answer ready. "Filipino law, baby. Foreigners can't own land here. It's been that way forever. You know that. But we could have put it in both our names somehow," I said, my voice rising. "A lease agreement, a corporation, a marriage even, something. There had to be options." "It's complicated," she said, still calm, "and expensive. Lawyers, paperwork, fees. This was easier, faster. And we're together, Porter. We're building a life. It doesn't matter whose name is on the paper. It's our house, ours. Easier?" My hands were shaking now, the deed trembling in my grip. "I paid for this. All of it. $400,000, Zyrene. Everything I had. And my name isn't anywhere. Not a single line. Not a single mention." Her expression shifted. Her eyes got wet. Her voice cracked. "You don't trust me?" "That's not what I'm saying. It sounds like you don't trust me." Her voice trembled now, tears starting to fall. "After everything. After I gave you my heart. After I let you into my life. Into Sofia's life. After I introduced you to my family. You think I'm trying to cheat you? To steal from you?" "No," I said quickly, the guilt already rushing in. "No, I just want to make sure we're protected, both of us. What if something happens? What if we break up? What if we break up?" She cut me off, voice sharp now, wounded. "Is that what you're worried about? You think I'm with you for money? You think I don't love you?" "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." She grabbed the folder back, tears streaming down her face. "I can't believe this. After everything we've built, everything we've planned, you still don't trust me. You still think I'm just some poor Filipino girl trying to trap a rich American." "I'm not rich," I said weakly. "You are to me," she shouted. "You're the only person who ever helped us, who ever cared, and now you're accusing me of using you, of lying, after I gave you everything." She turned and headed for the door. I grabbed her arm. "Zyrene, wait, please. I'm sorry. I'm just scared. I'm just trying to understand." She pulled away. "Understand what? That I love you? That I want to build a life with you? What else do you need to understand, Porter? The house is in my name because it has to be, because that's the law. But it's our house. Ours. And if you can't trust that, if you can't trust me, then maybe we shouldn't be doing this at all." She walked out. The door slammed. I stood there alone, holding nothing, feeling like the worst person alive, guilty for doubting her, guilty for questioning, guilty for not just believing that love was enough. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I was just scared because I'd already lost so much in my life. Margaret, my savings, my sense of purpose. Maybe I was just looking for problems where there weren't any. We were together. We loved each other. The house was for both of us, even if the paper only said her name. That's just how things worked here. I had to trust that. I had to believe. I had to. Because the alternative was too terrible to accept. After that conversation, everything changed. Zyrene became distant in a way that felt deliberate. She stopped visiting me as often, stopped bringing me lunch at the construction site, even though the house was finished now, stopped calling just to talk. When I called her, she answered, but her voice was cold, flat, like she was talking to a stranger, not the man who'd just given her $400,000 and his whole heart. "Are you okay?" I asked one evening when she finally answered after the 5th call. "I'm fine." "You don't sound fine. Talk to me, Zyrene, please." "I'm just tired, Porter. Work is hard. Sofia's been sick. My mother is stressed. I have a lot on my mind. Can I help? Do you need money for medicine? For Sofia?" "You've done enough," she said. The way she said it made my stomach turn. Not grateful, not kind, just empty. What does that mean? It means exactly what it sounds like. "You've helped. Thank you. But I need space right now." "Space? Zyrene, we're supposed to be moving into the house. We're supposed to be starting our life." I said, "I need space, Porter." The line went dead. She'd hung up on me. I tried to give her what she asked for. I tried to be understanding. But the distance kept growing like a physical thing I could feel. She stopped responding to my texts, stopped answering my calls. When I went to her apartment, Lita met me at the door. "Zyrene doesn't want to see you right now," she said. "Why? What did I do?" Lita shrugged. "Ask her." "I'm trying to. She won't talk to me." "Then maybe you have your answer." She started to close the door. "Lita, please. I love her. I love Sofia. I just want to understand what's happening." She looked at me then with something almost like pity. "You gave her money. She used it. That's what's happening." "What?" "Go home, Porter." She shut the door in my face. I stood there in the hallway, stunned. What did that mean? She used it? Used what? The money? The house? Me? I started paying more attention after that. Watching, noticing things I'd ignored before. Zyrene was on her phone constantly the few times I did see her, texting someone, smiling at the screen. When I asked who she was talking to, she snapped at me. "Why are you always watching me? Can't I have privacy?" "I'm not watching you," I said. "I'm just asking who you're talking to." "Is that wrong?" "Yes, actually, it is. You're acting like my father, like you own me." "I never said that." "You're thinking it, though. I can tell. You think because you gave me money, you own me now. You own my time, my attention, my life. That's not fair, isn't it?" She stood up, grabbing her purse. "I'm leaving." "Where are you going?" "Out." "Out where?" "To my cousin's," she said, already heading for the door. "I'll be back later." But I'd never met this cousin. Didn't even know she had a cousin in Cebu. I sat in the empty apartment she was supposedly sharing with me now, listening to the door slam, feeling like a stranger. Like I didn't matter anymore. Like I'd been erased. The house was finished. $400,000. And I'd never felt more alone. I didn't see Zyrene for 3 days after that fight. She didn't answer my calls. Didn't reply to my messages. I drove to her mother's apartment multiple times, but no one answered. I started to panic. Was she okay? Was Sofia okay? Had something happened? I drove to the house, our house, hoping maybe she'd gone there. The gate was open, and I walked up the driveway, my heart pounding. I could hear voices inside, laughter, music playing. the sound of a television. Someone was there. I knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again, harder. The door opened. But it wasn't Zyrene. It was a man, Filipino, maybe 35, muscular, with a sleeveless shirt and a beer in his hand. He looked at me, confused, slightly annoyed. "Can I help you?" My mouth went dry. "Who are you? Who are you?" He shot back, more aggressive now. "I'm Porter," I said, my voice shaking. "I built this house. Where's Zyrene?" Before he could answer, Zyrene appeared behind him in the doorway. She looked annoyed, not surprised, not embarrassed, not guilty, just annoyed that I was there. "Porter, what are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" My voice cracked. "What is he doing here? Who is this?" "This is Marco," she said flatly, like it was the most normal thing in the world. "He's a friend." "A friend?" I looked at Marco, then back at her. "A friend? In the house I built? The house I paid $400,000 for?" "It's not your house," she said calmly, coldly, like she'd been waiting to say this. "It's mine. My name is on the deed. Remember?" My whole body went numb. "Zyrene, we built this together. You said it was our house. You said we were starting a life together." "I said a lot of things," she interrupted, her voice sharp. "And you believed them. That's not my fault." Marco stepped forward, protective. "Man, you need to leave. This is private property." "I'm not talking to you," I snapped at him. "Zyrene, please, talk to me. What is happening? What did I do wrong?" She sighed, like I was being tedious. "You didn't do anything wrong, Porter. You gave me money. I used it to build a house. That's it. That's all this was." All this was? I felt tears burning in my eyes. What about us? What about Sofia? What about our future? "There is no us," she said simply. "There never really was. You wanted to feel needed. I needed security. We both got what we wanted. Now it's over." "Over, over," she repeated. "Porter, go home. This isn't your place. It never was." Marco stepped closer, his hand on the door. "You heard her, man. Time to go." I wanted to scream, to argue, to demand answers, to make her explain how she could do this. But I couldn't speak. My throat was closed. My chest felt like it was caving in. I just stood there, shaking, staring at the woman I'd given everything to, the woman I'd loved, the woman I'd trusted with my entire future. And there was nothing in her eyes. No warmth, no regret, no guilt, nothing. Just cold indifference, like I'd never mattered at all. Finally, I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard the door close. Then I heard them laughing. I went to see a lawyer the next morning. A local attorney, recommended by another expat I'd met at a bar once. His office was small, cluttered with files and paperwork, smelling like instant coffee and cigarette smoke. I told him everything. The money, the house, the deed with only her name, the promises, the betrayal. He listened, nodding slowly, taking notes, his expression growing more sympathetic and more resigned with every sentence. Finally, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Mr. Porter, I'm very sorry to tell you this, but you have no legal claim to that property. I paid for it," I said. "All of it, every single peso came from my accounts. $400,000. I can show you the bank transfers. Did you have a contract? A written agreement? Anything that says she was supposed to put your name on the title?" "No." "But she said—" "It doesn't matter what she said," he interrupted gently. "Verbal promises aren't enforceable in property transactions. Under Filipino law, foreigners cannot own land, period. If the title is in her name and her name only, it's her property. Legally, she owes you nothing." "Nothing?" "I paid for the land, the construction, everything. The money you gave her is legally considered a gift, unless you can prove fraud, and even then, it would be very difficult and very expensive to pursue in court. You'd need to prove she deliberately deceived you with the intent to steal, which is nearly impossible to establish. She did deceive me, I said desperately. She lied. She said it was our house. She said we were building a future together. He looked at me with genuine pity. I believe you, Mr. Porter, but Philippine law doesn't recognize verbal promises in property ownership disputes. And unfortunately, this happens more often than you'd think, especially with foreign men and younger Filipino women. I see cases like yours every month. Every month. I was just another stupid foreigner, another old man who thought he could buy love, another fool. So I just lost everything, I said quietly. $400,000, my entire savings, everything my wife left me, everything I had for retirement, and there's nothing I can do? He nodded slowly. I'm afraid so. I'm very sorry. I left his office in a daze. The sun was too bright. The street noise was too loud. Everything felt wrong. I drove back to my rental apartment and sat on the bed, staring at the walls, trying to process what had just happened. $400,000. Gone. Years of working as a postal carrier, Margaret's life insurance policy, my retirement fund, everything. All of it. Gone. And for what? For a woman who never loved me, for a house I'd never live in, for a dream that was never real. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through photos. Me and Zyrene at the beach. Me and Sofia at the park. Me standing in front of the house, smiling, holding blueprints like an idiot. I looked so happy in those pictures, so hopeful, so blind. I thought about Margaret, how she'd always been careful with money, how she'd saved every penny, how she'd made me promise before she died to be smart, to be careful, to not do anything stupid with the money she was leaving me. I'd broken that promise completely. I thought about my daughter Karen, who'd warned me when I first told her about Zyrene. Dad, be careful. I know you're lonely, but please be smart. Protect yourself. I hadn't listened. I'd been so desperate to feel something again, so desperate to believe someone could want me. And now I had nothing. I didn't hear from Zyrene for a week. Then one afternoon, I was sitting at a small restaurant near my apartment, picking at a plate of pancit I had no appetite for. A car drove past, new, expensive, a white Honda SUV with tinted windows. And Zyrene was in the driver's seat. Marco was beside her in the passenger seat. They were both laughing at something, his hand on her knee, her hair loose and blowing in the wind from the air conditioning. She didn't even glance my way, didn't see me. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. They drove past and disappeared around the corner. I sat there, frozen, watching the space where the car had been. That was it. That was my answer. She'd moved on, completely. Like I'd never existed. Like the last year of my life had been nothing. Like $400,000 was just pocket change. Like my heart didn't matter at all. I went home and opened my laptop. I stared at the screen for a long time, thinking about what to say. Then I started typing. A message to Zyrene. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I didn't threaten. I just wrote the truth. I loved you, Zyrene. I really did. I thought we were building something real. I thought you cared about me. I gave you everything I had because I believed in us. I believed in you. I hope the house makes you happy. I hope it was worth it. I hope you think of me sometimes and feel something. Anything. But I won't bother you anymore. I can't. It hurts too much. Goodbye. I hit send. Then I blocked her number, blocked her on Facebook, blocked her on Instagram, deleted every photo from my phone, every message, every memory I could erase. I needed her gone. I needed to stop hoping she'd apologize. Stop hoping she'd realize what she'd done. Stop hoping she'd feel even a fraction of the pain I was feeling. Because she never would. She never did. And she never will. Days passed. Then weeks. I stayed in my apartment most of the time, only going out for food when I had to. I thought about going back to Hawaii. I looked at flights every day. Imagined showing up at Karen's door. Hi, honey. I'm back. I lost everything. I was an idiot. Can I stay with you? But I couldn't do it. I couldn't face the shame, the judgment, The disappointment in her eyes when she'd realized she'd been right all along and I'd ignored her. One evening, I walked to the beach where I'd first met Zyrene. The same cafe was still there, though she didn't work there anymore. I sat at the same table where we'd talked for hours that first day. I watched the sunset, the same orange and gold colors, the same waves crashing on the shore. I remembered how hopeful I'd felt that day, how alive, how convinced that this was my second chance. Now I just felt hollow, empty, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left just the shell. I thought about trust, how easy it is to give when you're desperate, how impossible it is to get back once it's broken. I trusted Zyrene with my heart, my money, my future, and she'd taken it all without a second thought. But I couldn't even hate her, not really, not completely, because I knew the truth. I'd let it happen. I'd ignored every red flag, every warning sign, every moment of doubt. I'd been so desperate to feel needed that I'd made myself blind, and that was on me, not her. I sat there until the sun went down completely. Then I walked back to my apartment, alone, the way I'd been all along. I didn't leave the Philippines. I thought about it every single day for months. I looked at flights. I imagined going back to Hawaii, starting over, admitting defeat. But I couldn't do it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I stayed. Not because I wanted to fight for the house. I knew it was gone. Legally, emotionally, permanently gone. I stayed because I needed to understand. Understand how I'd let this happen. Understand what I'd missed. Understand how to live with myself now that I knew the truth about who I was. Desperate, foolish, easy to use. I started talking to other expats at the bars and restaurants. Older men like me. Americans, Australians, British guys who'd retired here, chasing cheap beer and cheaper lives. Most of them had stories. Not all as bad as mine, but close enough, similar enough to hurt. One guy, a retired engineer from Texas named Bill, lost $60,000 to a woman who disappeared the day after he gave her money for her mother's emergency surgery. The mother was fine. The woman was gone. Another guy, a former teacher from Australia named Graham, built a house just like I did. Same story. Her name only. No recourse. He eventually gave up and moved to a smaller apartment. "It's the dream, mate," Graham said one night, sipping his beer, his voice bitter but resigned. "We come here thinking we've found paradise. Warm weather, cheap cost of living, beautiful women who actually seem to want us, a second chance at life. But it's not real. It never is. They need money. We need to feel needed. It's a transaction dressed up as romance." "Did you ever get your money back?" I asked. He laughed, a hollow sound. "No, Philippine law doesn't protect stupid foreigners from their own desperation. I learned to let it go. That's the only way to survive it. You let it go, or it kills you, slowly, from the inside." I thought about that conversation a lot. Letting it go, forgiving myself, moving on. It wasn't easy. Some days it felt impossible. I drove past the house sometimes. I couldn't help it. It was beautiful. The yard was landscaped now, with colorful flowers along the driveway and a new fence around the property. Zyrene's car was always parked out front, Marco's motorcycle too. Sometimes I'd see them outside, working in the garden or sitting on the porch, living the life I'd imagined for us, and I'd feel nothing, or everything. I couldn't tell which anymore, but slowly, over months, something shifted inside me. The anger faded into something quieter. The shame softened into acceptance. I stopped thinking about Zyrene every day, then every week. Then only occasionally, I started going out again, meeting people, making actual friends, real friends who didn't want anything from me except conversation and company. Other expats who understood, who didn't judge, who'd made their own mistakes and survived them. One afternoon, I met an old American man at a beachside bar. He was maybe 80, with a long gray beard and a face like worn leather. He bought me a beer without asking, and we talked for hours about nothing important and everything that mattered. He'd been in the Philippines for 20 years, married a local woman, had kids with her, grandkids now. You built a house for a woman, and she kept it? He asked, not unkindly. I nodded, staring at my beer. He laughed, not cruel, just knowing, like he'd seen this story play out 100 times. You're not the first, won't be the last. Foreigners can't own land here. That's the law. Simple as that. If you give money to someone, it's gone, no matter what promises they make, no matter what you think the relationship is. You ever lose money like that? I asked. He shrugged. Not like you did, but I learned early. Keep your name on what matters. Protect yourself first. Love doesn't mean giving up everything. Real love means building something equal, something fair. If she won't let you protect yourself, she doesn't love you. She loves what you can give her. Those words hit me like a physical thing. Real love means building something equal. Zyrene never wanted equal. She wanted everything, and I gave it to her because I was terrified of being alone. I stopped blaming her after that conversation, or I tried to. She saw an opportunity and took it. That's survival. That's human nature. She had a daughter to feed, a mother to support, no future prospects. I showed up with money and loneliness and a desperate need to matter. Of course she used me. What else was she going to do? But I blamed myself for being desperate, for ignoring every warning sign, for believing a 30-year-old woman could love a 72-year-old man for who he was, not what he had, for thinking my money could buy something real. I should have known better. Part of me did know better, but I didn't want to know. I wanted to believe, and that wanting destroyed me. I've been in the Philippines for 2 years now. I never went back to Hawaii. I still think about it sometimes, but this place feels more like home now. Not because of Zyrene, not because of the house, because I've learned something here that I couldn't have learned anywhere else. I've learned that you can lose everything and still survive. That regret doesn't have to define you. That starting over doesn't mean you've failed. It just means you're still trying. I live in a small apartment near the beach now. Nothing fancy. 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a bathroom with water pressure that varies wildly. But it's mine, really mine. I pay the rent every month from what's left of my pension. I cook my own meals, rice and whatever vegetables look good at the market, sometimes fish if it's fresh. I walk every morning along the beach, watching the sun rise over the water, feeling the sand between my toes. I talk to other expats, share stories, laugh at the absurdity of our choices. We've all lost something: money, dignity, faith in our own judgment. But we're still here, still breathing, still learning. I even went back to that cafe once. Not to see Zyrene. She doesn't work there anymore anyway. I just wanted to sit at the same table where it all started. I ordered coffee and watched the waves, remembering how hopeful I'd felt that day, how convinced that this was my second chance at happiness, how ready to believe that someone could want me for me. I don't feel that way anymore. But I don't feel dead either. I feel awake, clear, honest with myself in a way I never was before. I see the house sometimes when I'm driving through that area. I don't avoid it. What's the point? It's still beautiful, still standing. Zyrene still lives there with Marco. I heard they got married last year, had a small ceremony. Sofia calls him dad now. Good for them. I mean that. I really do. Because I've realized something important. That house was never mine. Not because my name wasn't on the deed, because I built it for the wrong reasons. I built it to feel needed, to feel young, to prove I still mattered to someone. But you can't build a life on need. You can't build love on desperation. Real love comes from truth, from honesty, from two people who see each other clearly, flaws and all, and choose each other anyway. Zyrene never saw me. She saw my money, my loneliness, my desperation, and I let her. I handed her everything because I was terrified of being alone. But here's the thing, the truth I've had to accept. I am alone now, and I'm okay. I'm not happy every day. Some days I still feel the weight of what I lost. The money that was supposed to last me the rest of my life, the dream of companionship in my final years, The future I'd imagined so clearly it felt real, but I survived it. I'm still here, still trying, and that matters. I didn't leave Hawaii to find peace. I left because I was running from grief, from loneliness, from the fear that my life was over and nothing mattered anymore. But life isn't over until you stop trying, and I'm still here, still trying. I don't regret coming to the Philippines. I don't even regret meeting Zyrine. I don't regret building the house, because all of it taught me something I desperately needed to learn. You can't buy love. You can't buy belonging. You can't buy purpose. You can only build those things, slowly and carefully, with someone who wants to build them with you. Zyrene didn't want that. She wanted security for herself and Sofia. She wanted a better life. She wanted a house with her name on it. I understand that now, and I don't hate her for it, but I hate that I let it happen. I hate that I ignored every red flag, every warning, every moment of doubt, every concerned comment from my daughter, every small voice in my head saying, slow down, be careful, protect yourself. I told myself love was enough, but love without truth, without equality, without mutual respect, is just a transaction, and I got nothing in return. I think about Margaret sometimes, my late wife. She loved me when I had nothing, when I was just a young postal worker trying to make rent every month. She stayed with me through 43 years, through good times and bad, through her cancer treatments when she lost her hair and her strength, but never her love for me. That was real. What I had with Zyrene was a fantasy, a desperate attempt to recapture something I'd lost, and I paid $400,000 for that fantasy. Was it worth it? No, of course not. But did I learn from it? Yes, and maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all I can ask for at this point. I'm 72 years old. I've lived a full life. I've loved and lost. I've made mistakes, some small, some devastatingly large, but I'm still here, still breathing, still learning, still trying to figure out how to be human. The house still stands. Beautiful and bright and perfect, with Zyrene's name on the deed and Marco's motorcycle in the driveway. I drive by sometimes and I don't feel angry anymore. I don't feel betrayed. I just feel sad. Sad for the man I was, the man who believed so desperately that he ignored reality, the man who needed to be needed so badly that he handed over everything without question. But I'm not that man anymore. I'm different now, changed, awake. I won't make the same mistake again, not because I'm bitter, not because I'll never trust anyone, but because I've learned the most important lesson of my life. You have to protect yourself. Even in love, especially in love, you have to ask the hard questions. You have to look at the red flags and actually see them. You have to put your name on what matters. And if someone won't let you, if they get defensive or angry or accusatory when you try to protect yourself, then they don't love you. They love what you can give them. That's the truth. The painful, expensive, soul-crushing truth. And it took losing $400,000 and my last chance at happiness for me to finally understand it. The house is hers. The money is gone. The dream is dead. But the lesson is mine, and I'll carry it with me for whatever time I have left, because maybe that's the only thing any of us truly own in the end. Not houses, not money, not other people's love. Just the lessons we learn, the wisdom we gain, the truth we finally accept. And I accept it now, all of it. The loss, the shame, the regret, the loneliness. I accept that I was a fool, that I let desperation guide me, that I ignored every warning because I wanted so badly to believe. I accept that the house will never be mine, that Zyrine will never apologize, that Marco will raise Sofia as his own, that my $400,000 is gone forever. I accept all of it, and in accepting it, I found something unexpected. Not happiness, not peace, but something quieter, something steadier, survival, clarity, self-knowledge, the ability to wake up each morning and face another day without drowning in regret. That's enough. It has to be, because it's all I have left. The house stands, I remain, and somehow that's enough.